Mark was traveling along a lonely stretch of highway in the middle of nowhere. Raindrops pelting the windshield echoed throughout the vehicle as it poured down in torrents, obscuring his eyesight with a dense layer of mist. The repetitive sound of the rain began to wear on him, and fatigue set in. Mark struggled to keep his eyes on the road in front of him when he spotted a guy crouched by the side of the road. He could see the figure of a soaking and shivering hitchhiker by squinting through the rain-spattered windscreen. Mark slowed down and stopped, his tires splashing through the puddles, as he did so out of caution and sympathy. The young man who had been waiting for a ride approached the vehicle, and without saying a word climbed into the back seat. When the hitchhiker turned to meet Mark, he was anticipating at least a nod of acknowledgement, but the interaction took on an unsettling feel because the hitchhiker's face was obscured in the darkness. As Mark attempted to start a discussion with his passenger, awkward silence permeated the vehicle. In spite of this, the hitchhiker's uncanny quiet persisted, and Mark began to feel uneasy. As the automobile sped through the sodden night of rain, the tension in the air increased visibly. The repetitive sound of the wipers broke the stillness. As the kilometers passed, time seemed to drag on, and Mark couldn't help but sense that something wasn't right. The hitchhiker's presence in the vehicle gave the impression that he was only a phantom traveling beside us. Mark's heart skipped a beat as he approached a poorly lighted crossing and turned to speak to the hitchhiker, only to discover that the back seat was empty. He tightened his grasp on the driving wheel as panic overcame him. He rapidly surveyed the area in an attempt to spot the hitchhiker, but the rain obscured his vision and made it difficult for him to see. Mark looked at the rearview mirror, which caused a shiver to go down his spine. The hitchhiker was there by the side of the road, his form enveloped in an otherworldly glow. As Mark looked into the hitchhiker's eyes, which shone with an otherworldly brightness that cut through the night, his breath caught in his throat. The hitchhiker raised his hand in an apparent farewell gesture, then swiftly disappeared into the dark night. Mark, who was utterly shaken, pressed the gas pedal as his heart was thumping in his chest. He sped off, tormented by the experience with the phantom hitchhiker and the unanswered questions that persisted in his thoughts, while raindrops pounded against the car's roof. The hitchhiker was who? Was it something he imagined, a ghostly apparition, or something much darker? 5 intrepid companions set out on a road trip to discover the marvels of the countryside. They had carefully planned their trip, noting the picturesque pathways and undiscovered treasures they were determined to find. As they crammed into the car, laughter and conversation resounded throughout the vehicle, filling the air with excitement. As the day went on, they discovered themselves traveling farther into the middle of the countryside, away from well-traveled roads and busy cities. Open fields gave way to deep woodlands, and the atmosphere changed, becoming peaceful and spooky at the same time. A dense fog moved in as evening approached, covering the area and limiting vision to a few feet. The group became lost and a little uneasy when the GPS connection wavered and then vanished. They started laughing nervously, then looked around nervously as they realized they were lost in this strange place. They kept going, expecting to come across a marker or a fellow traveler who could direct them back to the right way. But there was an air of dread in the car. But there were no indications of civilization in sight, and the road appeared to go on forever. The fog appeared to be purposely holding them in its eerie embrace as it became thicker. The group's worry increased as weird events started to affect them. Their voices had an eerie tone that gave them chills as they heard the wind carry faint murmurs. They occasionally caught glimpses of enigmatic but scary forms moving quickly between the trees. Their senses were misled by the thick fog, which distorted distances and objects and made them feel anxious and bewildered. They were first excited, but as time went on, their fear increased. The path ahead seemed to alter, taking them farther into the enigmatic unknown as they made their way through the fog using instinct and infrequent views of landmarks. The fog turned into a maze of doubt as they circled in place, losing all sense of time. They were plagued by doubt, and the tension in the automobile was intense. The group's previously exuberant chats had been replaced by nervous murmurs as everyone regretted their choice to set off on this unfortunate road trip. As the night drew on, fatigue set in, and their drained eyes strained to see any sign of hope in the swirling mist. Every breath they took was filled with desperation as they held on to the flimsy hope that they would be able to break out of this ethereal imprisonment. But just as optimism started to dwindle, something changed slowly. The road stretching out before them, leading to a small village bathed in a warm, comforting glow, became visible as the fog gradually dissipated. They finally escaped the odd fog that had trapped them for what seemed like a lifetime as they continued up the trail, feeling relief sweep over them. The village provided solace, its residents unaware of the supernatural ordeal the trio had gone through. But even as they enjoyed the convenience of civilization, the recollection of the foggy maze lingered in their minds, serving as a reminder that some routes conceal secrets that are beyond the knowledge of mortals. Alex started his long trek down a lonely roadway on a moonless night. The area was enveloped in an awful silence, and the road stretched out before them, disappearing into the night. Alex started to feel uncomfortable, but they had to press on because of how appealing the wide road was. Alex observed a flickering light in the distance as the miles passed. They cautiously approached the location out of curiosity and found a run-down petrol station by the side of the road. Its old sign creaked with each blast of wind as it swung hauntingly. Alex chose to stop despite its unsettling appearance in an effort to refuel and grab a bite to eat. Alex felt a chill run down his spine as they left the vehicle and looked around at the barren landscape. The gas station's flickering fluorescent lights created spooky shadows on the old pumps, and the air was heavy with an unfathomable gravity. Only the distant sound of a howling wind could be heard, breaking the strange calm which hung in the air. The atmosphere within the station was similar to the gloom outside. Dusty things were barely stocked on the shelves, and dark flickering lights buzzed above. As they got closer to the desk, where a skinny and grumpy employee was standing with hollow, lifeless eyes, a feeling of dread settled over Alex. Alex placed an order for a coffee and looked over the little variety of packed foods. The attendant advised Alex to exercise caution on the road in front of him, his voice barely audible above a whisper, and his eyes flitting with a hint of terror. He described an old curse that afflicted this section of road, a curse that caught unwary motorists in an endless loop and damned their spirits to wander the lonely road forever. Anxiety swept over them as Alex headed back to their car. Although disobeying the warning appeared impossible, they were internally tormented by anxiety. They took a deep breath, turned on the engine, and returned to the lonely highway, the tale of the curse reverberating in their minds. Time sped up as the road continued indefinitely and the environment repeated itself in a confusing loop. As they came to the terrifying realization that they were under the curse, panic seized Alex. Every curve on the roadway led back to the same lonely location, turning it into an impossible maze. They searched in vain for an escape, a sign of civilization, or any glimmer of hope, as their desperation enjoyed them. Whispers carried the tortured voices of those imprisoned before them, as shadows danced along the road, taking on horrible shapes. As the night went on, fatigue set in and Alex's willpower started to waver. They slammed their foot on the gas in a final act of desperation, hoping to escape the bounds of the curse. The world outside the car was a mix-up of darkness and twisted landscapes as it raced down the highway at a rapid pace. The car was suddenly enveloped in shining light, and a thunderous noise filled the air. They discovered themselves parked on the side of a separate road, far from the cursed highway. They felt relieved, but the memory of that tragic night remained, acting as a chilling reminder that some roads carry more than simply the weight of asphalt and lines. They have been absorbed permanently into the fabric of the highway's dark past and contain secrets, curses, and the suffering of lost souls.